Have you ever wondered what Saturn truly looks like from Earth? Not the photos from NASA, not the CGI images, but seeing it with your own eyes through a telescope. Tonight, we're uncovering the secrets of Saturn's magnificent rings, its shimmering moons, and why what you see is even more breathtaking than you ever imagined. Stay with me, because this is a view of the cosmos you'll never forget. If you love exploring the wonders of the universe, hit that subscribe button and join our journey through space. Don't miss our weekly adventures uncovering the secrets of planets, stars, and galaxies beyond your imagination. When you step outside on a calm night and gaze upward, you are greeted by a sky filled with a billion silent lights. Some flicker, some glow steadily, some drift, and some seem frozen in place as if holding their breath. Among them sits Saturn, a tiny golden dot, barely distinguishable from the endless ocean of stars around it. Most people pass it by without even realizing they've just looked at one of the most magnificent masterpieces of the universe. But that small dot hides a secret so grand, so vast, so impossible that the human eye alone cannot comprehend it. And that is where the illusion of Saturn begins. The human eye, for all its brilliance, is limited. It was not designed to perceive the distant, the immense, or the delicate structures floating billions of kilometers away. Saturn lies so far from us that light takes more than an hour to travel from the planet to Earth. That means every time you see it, you are seeing 1 hour-old light. And that light, after traveling billions of kilometers, gets compressed into a tiny, star-like point by the time it reaches our eyes. We see brightness, we see color, but we don't see structure. The rings, the storms, the shadows, the incredible architecture that makes Saturn Saturn, all of it is invisible to us without help. To our eyes, Saturn becomes just another wandering light in the sky, one dot among millions. And yet, behind that simplicity lies the most deceptive illusion of the cosmos, the illusion of insignificance. Imagine standing in the ancient world, thousands of years before telescopes were invented. You look up and you see Saturn as a faint golden star. You can track its slow movement across the skies, steadier than the moon, more patient than Mars, more subtle than Jupiter. To ancient astronomers, it seemed mysterious, but there was no sign of rings, no clue of its true nature. They saw a star that moved differently, but they did not see a planet crowned with the greatest ring system in our solar system. For millennia, every civilization, Babylonian, Greek, Roman, Chinese, Indian, recorded Saturn as a celestial body of significance, but had no idea what it truly looked like. The naked eye kept its secrets well hidden. The illusion doesn't stop with distance. Saturn's rings are vast in width, stretching hundreds of thousands of kilometers across, but they are incredibly thin. Some parts of the ring are no thicker than a house, others are only tens of meters thick. Imagine a sheet of ice stretched wider than the distance between Earth and the Moon, yet thinner than a city block. From Earth, that thinness plays a huge role in their invisibility. When light from Saturn reaches the Earth, it scatters just enough to blur the fragile line of the rings. They dissolve into the brightness of the planet, disappearing before they even reach your retina. The rings are there, bold and shining, but your eyes simply cannot separate them from the overwhelming glow of Saturn's reflected sunlight. Another illusion lies in the scale of Saturn compared to other objects in the sky. You see Jupiter easily, it is brighter, larger, more obvious. Even Venus grabs attention with its brilliant shine, but Saturn sits farther away, shining softly. Our sky is full of objects fighting for your attention. Aircraft moving across the horizon, satellites flashing as they catch sunlight, stars shimmering with temperature changes and atmospheric distortion. In all this visual noise, Saturn's true identity becomes muted. The quiet glow deceives you into believing it is small. The faint glimmer convinces you it is ordinary, and because you are accustomed to seeing stars as points of light, your brain automatically files Saturn into that same category. There is also a deeper illusion here, one created by human perception itself. Our eyes are designed to interpret contrast, brightness, and motion. They are excellent at spotting nearby details, recognizing patterns, reading facial expressions, and detecting movement in our immediate environment. But the human eye is not designed for astronomical distances. It was never built to see something 2 billion kilometers away. So when light carrying the story of Saturn enters your eye, your brain compresses that story into a single pixel. That star you see is not a point of light. It is a planet so large it could swallow Earth 764 times. But you don't see size, you only see light. You don't see rings stretching across space like cosmic wings. You only see a shimmer lost among 1,000 others. The illusion is powerful because it is created by your own biology. Consider this: if the rings were made of fire instead of ice, glowing like a burning halo around the planet, you still wouldn't see them. If the rings were 10 times brighter, 10 times thicker, or 100 times wider, you still wouldn't see them without magnification. The sheer distance washes everything into a single point of light. You could live your whole life staring at Saturn every night and never know it carries one of the most extraordinary structures in the solar system. That is the great cosmic trick, beauty hidden in plain sight. And yet, despite being invisible to the naked eye, the rings have shaped nearly every myth and idea humans once made about Saturn. In ancient Rome, Saturn was the god of time and harvest. Slow, patient, distant. The faint golden glow seemed wise and old, as if aged by the cosmos. In India, Shani Saturn was the planet of karma, a celestial judge who watched quietly from afar. In China, Saturn was the Earth star, representing stability. All these interpretations stem from a tiny dot of light. No one saw the rings, no one saw the storms. No one saw the moons orbiting in silent harmony, and yet Saturn influenced cultures, religions, and interpretations for thousands of years. A dot became a symbol, a speck became a force, but never, not once, did the truth reveal itself to the naked eye. Now imagine the moment when Galileo became the first person to break this illusion. He pointed his crude telescope, far weaker than even the cheapest telescopes today, toward Saturn in 1610. And what he saw shook him. Saturn was no longer a single point. It had ears, strange protrusions on each side. His telescope could not resolve the rings clearly, but it was strong enough to expose the lie that Saturn was a simple star. The illusion began to crack. Galileo did not understand what he saw, but he knew Saturn was different. Still, the naked eye continued deceiving millions of people long after that. If Galileo had not used a telescope, we might still believe Saturn is just another star. Even today, despite our modern technology, people continue to underestimate Saturn when they see it with their own eyes. Many are disappointed the first time they try to spot it without equipment. They expect something majestic, maybe even visible rings. But Saturn remains stubbornly subtle, refusing to reveal itself without effort. The planet teaches a quiet lesson: the universe does not give its wonders away easily. You must earn them, with curiosity, with tools, with patience. When you look at Saturn with the naked eye, you may not realize that the rings are angled differently depending on the year. Sometimes they are wide open, showing their full circular glory. Other times they appear nearly edge-on, becoming so thin that even telescopes struggle. But the naked eye sees no difference. It cannot register depth or angle from such extremes of scale. Meanwhile, Saturn continues to change dramatically in ways invisible to you. Storms broader than continents rage across its surface. Shadows from the rings move across the planet like ink strokes on golden clouds. Moons pass in front of it, casting tiny black dots that drift across its face. Seasons change slowly, each lasting more than 7 Earth years. The planet rotates at incredible speeds, completing a day in just over 10 hours. But from where you stand, looking upward at a dot, you see none of this. The illusion remains intact. And yet there is a strange beauty in this limitation. The human eye cannot see Saturn clearly, but it still notices its gentle glow. That dot of light still calls to people, still inspires wonder, still makes children ask, "What's that shining star?" Even in its most hidden form, Saturn has the power to awaken curiosity. The illusion does not diminish its magic, it enhances it. Because the moment someone decides to see Saturn through a telescope, the universe rewards them with one of the greatest surprises of human experience. The experience is so powerful that people often gasp, cry, or fall into stunned silence the first time they truly see Saturn. That moment is a transformation not just of perception, but of the entire relationship between a human being and the cosmos. The illusion collapses instantly, the dot becomes a world, the star becomes a planet, the myth becomes reality, and the reality is more beautiful than anything the naked eye could ever show. So when you look at Saturn in the sky and see only a point of golden light, remember that the universe is not hiding Saturn from you. It is inviting you to seek it, it is testing your curiosity, it is reminding you that even the most ordinary looking things can carry unimaginable beauty. The illusion of Saturn is not a trick, it is a doorway, and once you step through it, nothing in the night sky will ever feel ordinary again. The moment you point even the smallest telescope toward Saturn, the universe changes. The sky you thought you knew, the stars you believed were familiar, the quiet dot of golden light you once passed over without a second thought, everything transforms into something far greater than you could ever imagine. There are few experiences in life that break the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary, but seeing Saturn's rings for the very first time is one of them. It is a moment that feels like a doorway opening, a moment where the universe stops being a distant idea and becomes something real, tangible, and breathtaking. For most people, the night sky is a canvas of points, dots of light, some brighter, some dimmer, scattered across the darkness. They shimmer, they twinkle, but they do not reveal their secrets. They keep you distant, they keep you guessing. Saturn is no exception. When seen with the naked eye, it appears as just another golden star, perhaps slightly brighter, but nothing more remarkable than that. It gives you no hint of the magnificent structure that surrounds it. But when you raise a telescope, any telescope, to your eye and align it with that quiet golden dot, everything the universe has hidden from you suddenly appears. What you see first is a shape, a distinct shape. Saturn is no longer a point of light. It becomes a tiny, glowing planet. And wrapping around that glowing sphere is a thin, sharp, luminous band, a ring. No matter how many photographs you've seen, no matter how many documentaries you've watched, no matter how prepared you think you are, the shock of seeing Saturn's rings with your own eyes cannot be described. It is an entirely different kind of beauty, raw, personal, and humbling. It doesn't feel like looking at a picture. It feels like a direct connection to the cosmos, like reality itself has opened up and whispered a secret. People often underestimate how powerful even the simplest telescope can be. A small refractor, the kind children use in school projects, can show Saturn and its rings clearly. You don't need advanced equipment or expensive gear. You only need curiosity and a little patience. The first time you finally manage to center Saturn in the eyepiece, the struggle instantly becomes worth it. There it is, a world, suspended in the dark, floating in a silence deeper than anything you can imagine. It glows softly like a golden lantern hanging at the edge of infinity, and the rings curve gracefully around it as though carved by the hands of a cosmic artist. When you see Saturn this way, something inside you changes. It is not like seeing the moon through a telescope, where details appear familiar and expected. It is not like seeing Jupiter, which is bright, large, and vibrant. Saturn is different. Saturn feels delicate. Pure, elegant, it feels like a miracle, something too beautiful to be allowed, yet somehow real. The rings look impossible, like a piece of cosmic jewelry. They do not look like rock or ice or dust. They look like something sculpted with intention, something crafted with purpose. And the most incredible part, you are looking at something that exists exactly as you see it. There is no illusion, no exaggeration, no enhancement. The rings are really there. They encircle the planet in a perfect, breathtaking symmetry that no photograph can prepare you for. Photographs flatten the experience. They make Saturn seem distant, scientific, observed. But when you see it for yourself, the experience becomes intimate. It feels like Saturn is performing for you alone. As you study Saturn through the eyepiece, you begin to notice the details. The planet itself is not just yellow, it has subtle shades of gold, cream, and soft brown. You may even see faint bands wrapping around its surface, caused by storms and winds that move faster than any hurricane on Earth. The rings, too, show structure. They are not a single solid band. They are made of countless particles, ice, rock, dust, ranging in size from microscopic grains to mountains. These particles reflect sunlight with a brilliance that glows through the telescope. Then, as you adjust the focus, you see something even more extraordinary, the Cassini division. A dark gap splitting the rings into two major sections. That gap is visible even in small telescopes, and when you finally spot it, another wave of amazement hits you. You are not just seeing a ring, you are seeing the structure of a ring system, you are seeing the architecture of a world. If the atmosphere is steady and the night is calm, Saturn becomes sharper, clearer. Tiny dots appear nearby, its moons. Titan, the largest of them, glows faintly, orbiting like a small lantern tied to the planet by an invisible thread. Other moons, Dione, Tethys, may appear as faint stars close to the planet, but they are not stars. They are worlds, worlds orbiting another world, and you are watching them from the surface of yet another world. It is a moment that makes the universe feel vast and intimate at the same time. There is something almost sacred about this experience. You begin to understand why early astronomers were so captivated by Saturn. Even Galileo, with his crude telescope, was stunned by what he saw. His telescope was so weak that the rings appeared as strange ears on each side of the planet. He didn't know they were rings. He didn't have the clarity or magnification to understand, but even he sensed that Saturn was special, that it was hiding something profound. And centuries later, with better instruments and more knowledge, we can now see the truth clearly, yet the awe remains the same. The first time you see Saturn, you feel connected not just to the planet, but to every human being who has ever looked up and wondered. You feel connected to Galileo, who must have felt the same shock centuries ago. You feel connected to Cassini, who sent spacecraft to explore the rings beyond anything possible from Earth. You feel connected to the ancient observers who tracked Saturn across the sky without ever knowing its true form. And suddenly, you understand how extraordinary it is to live in a time when telescopes are accessible to anyone. You understand that you are witnessing something that countless generations could only dream about. Most people don't realize that Saturn's rings tilt toward and away from Earth as the planet orbits the Sun. Sometimes the rings are wide open, exposing their full glory. Sometimes they are nearly edge-on, appearing thin like a razor. If you look at Saturn in different years, you may see different appearances. But the moment you look at it through a telescope, you realize how dynamic and alive this planet truly is. It is not a static object. It is a living system, always changing, always moving, always presenting new views to those who look carefully enough. Seeing Saturn through a telescope also reveals the limitations of the human eye in the most beautiful way. Our eyes cannot see depth across such vast distances. They cannot perceive subtle color differences in faint objects millions of miles away. They cannot separate a bright planet from the glow surrounding it, but telescopes break those limits. They take the light that has traveled for over 1 billion kilometers and bend it just enough for your eye to grasp its detail. They turn impossibility into clarity. They make the unseen visible, and yet, despite the power of telescopes, the experience remains deeply human. The telescope does not create the beauty, it reveals what was already there. It does not invent the rings, it simply allows you to see them. The awe you feel does not come from the technology, but from the realization that something so magnificent exists in the first place. Many people who see Saturn through a telescope describe the experience as surreal. Some people laugh in disbelief. Some whisper, some cry, some go silent, and all of them feel something shift inside them, even if they cannot describe it. Because Saturn is not just a planet, it is a reminder that the universe is full of wonders that are invisible until you decide to seek them. A reminder that beauty can exist in places you will never visit, in realms you will never stand upon, in distances you will never cross. As you continue observing, you begin to understand why astronomers fall in love with the night sky. Every time you see Saturn, even if it's the 100th time, the feeling never fades. The rings always look impossible. The symmetry always looks too perfect. The world always looks too elegant. It feels like a masterpiece that never ages, never diminishes, never loses its enchantment. And yet, this masterpiece is temporary. The rings will not last forever. Slowly, particle by particle, they are falling into Saturn, a process scientists call ring rain. In millions of years, long after humanity is gone, the rings may disappear entirely, but in your lifetime they exist in their full glory, and you have the privilege of seeing them with your own eyes. When you place your eye against the telescope and see those rings glowing softly in the dark, you are witnessing something that exists in a brief window of cosmic time. That is the gift of seeing Saturn through a telescope, the gift of discovering a world not through pictures or words, but through your own vision. It is not just astronomy, it is a personal meeting between you and the universe, and once you see Saturn this way, the night sky will never look the same again. Every star will feel like a mystery waiting to be unveiled. Every point of light will feel like a world hiding just beyond your reach. And Saturn will always remain the first world that taught you how incredibly beautiful the universe can be. When people see breathtaking images of Saturn taken by NASA, as sharp, colorful, glowing with impossible beauty, they often ask a simple, honest question: does Saturn really look like that? The truth is more fascinating than a yes or no. There is a difference between what Saturn looks like in space, what it looks like in NASA photos, and what it looks like when you see it through a telescope from Earth. And this difference is not a deception, it is a story about human vision, technology, and the incredible reality of Saturn itself. NASA images are designed to reveal details the human eye cannot naturally see. Telescopes in space collect light over long periods, use sensors hundreds of thousands of times more sensitive than our eyes, and apply filters to separate the colors of light that reveal atmospheric patterns, storms, and hidden structures. But none of that changes what Saturn is. It only changes what we can perceive. And that is where the beauty lies, because when you look at Saturn through a telescope yourself, you realize that the truth is somewhere in between the photographs and your imagination. Softer, quieter, but no less extraordinary. When you first see Saturn through a small telescope, you notice immediately that the colors are gentle, almost pastel. The planet glows a warm yellow, gold. The rings appear silvery white, slightly brighter than the planet, crisp and unmistakable. In that moment, you understand that the rings are not a trick of the camera, not a computer-generated effect, not an illusion of editing. They are real, visible, clear, and undeniably there. You can see the separation between the rings and the planet. You can see the shadow of the rings cast on Saturn's upper atmosphere. You can even distinguish the major division in the rings, the Cassini division appearing as a dark line carved into the luminous band. Yet the image you see is also different from NASA photos. It is softer, like a watercolor painting instead of a high-resolution digital picture. The details are not as sharp, the colors are not as vivid. The bands in the atmosphere appear faint, subtle, barely noticeable unless the night air is perfectly calm. But this softness is not a disappointment. It is part of the magic, because you are not looking at a photograph. You are looking at reality, filtered through your own eyes, your own telescope, your own connection to the universe. NASA's photographs, on the other hand, are like magnified truths. They are truth plus detail, and not truth plus fiction. The color enhancements are not meant to mislead anyone. They serve a purpose, showing storms, temperature differences, ring compositions, and atmospheric layers that would otherwise be invisible. When you see Saturn in a NAS, a portrait glowing with deep golds, crystal whites, blues at the poles and razor, sharp ring edges, you are seeing Saturn with superhuman vision. You are seeing what Saturn reveals when you amplify the light, stretch the wavelengths, and pull every hidden detail forward. But when you see Saturn through a telescope, you see it from Earth as a human being, a fragile creature staring through glass and metal at a distant world. And that experience has a beauty no photograph can replicate. NASA gives you information, a telescope gives you connection. Imagine this moment. You stand under a quiet sky, your telescope pointed upward. You adjust the focus, your hands shaking because you know what you're about to see. The eyepiece becomes a tiny window into an unimaginable distance. You lean in, and suddenly there it is. Saturn, the same Saturn NASA studied with spacecraft costing billions, the same Saturn astronomers have charted for centuries, the same Saturn that has existed in mythology across cultures. You are seeing the real thing. The planet is small in the eyepiece, but perfect, striking, distinct. A perfect golden sphere with a ring around it, floating in darkness. It does not glow with the exaggerated colors of NASA photos, but it has something those photos cannot convey: presence. The presence of something immense and ancient, seen by your eyes through your telescope across billions of kilometers of space. You are not just observing Saturn, you are witnessing it. NASA images show details like violent storms at the poles, deep banding in the atmosphere, and translucent variations in the rings. These details are real, but human eyes cannot see them unaided. The reason is simple: your eye does not collect light the way a camera does. A camera can gather faint light for minutes or hours. Your eye collects light for a fraction of a second. So naturally, the telescope image is softer, but softer does not mean lesser. NASA shows you the science. Your telescope shows you the soul. There is a strange and beautiful truth here. When you look at Saturn through your telescope, you are seeing Saturn almost exactly the way it would appear if you were physically near it in space. Your eyes in space would see subtle, soft bands, gentle gradients, pale gold tones, and beautifully clean, bright rings. You would not see the high contrast colors of NASA photos unless you wore a helmet with digital enhancement. This means the human eye view from Earth is the closest thing to the natural, unfiltered view from space. NASA gives you what your eyes wish they could see. Your telescope gives you what your eyes were designed to see. The comparison becomes even richer when you consider how NASA images are made. Each image is a mosaic of wavelengths, some visible, some invisible. Ultraviolet, infrared, and sometimes even radio waves blend together to reveal structures. These images are like reading Saturn's biography with every chapter laid open. Your telescope view is like meeting Saturn in person, quiet, mysterious, deeply personal. Yet despite the differences, the essence remains the same. The rings, the golden planet, the symmetry, the beauty, Saturn never loses its identity, no matter how it is seen. Even astronomers say that photographs of Saturn, even the best ones, cannot prepare you for the feeling of seeing it through a telescope. Photos tell your brain what Saturn looks like, but observing it tells your heart what Saturn is. There is an emotion that cannot be captured in pixels. When you see Saturn with your own eye, it becomes real in a way no amount of photography can imitate. And that is why saying photos are fake is a misunderstanding. They are not fake, they are magnified truths. But the telescope gives you the authentic truth, the naked truth, the human truth. NASA shows the details. You see the wonder. There are moments when the telescope view surprises even people familiar with NASA images. For example, when the rings cast their shadow on the planet, the dark line looks like a brushstroke along the golden surface. When Saturn's shadow falls across the rings appear suddenly cut, as if bitten into by the planet itself. When a moon crosses in front of Saturn, you might see a tiny black dot drifting across the sphere. These sights aren't enhanced. They aren't edited, they are completely real. Another difference is scale. NASA images often show close-ups where Saturn's rings fill the frame or storms appear enormous and dramatic. Through a telescope, Saturn appears small, but that smallness is profound. You realize that the universe is vast not because the planets look big, but because even huge planets look tiny from Earth. You realize how far away Saturn truly is, how immense the cosmos is, how delicate our place within it must be. The telescope view is like looking at a priceless artifact far across a room. NASA is like holding that artifact up close. Two experiences, one truth. Another layer to this is psychological. People often expect Saturn to appear large and overwhelming in a telescope. But the fact that it appears small does not take away from the magic. It amplifies it. Because even though it appears small, the rings are unmistakable. The shape is unmistakable. The identity is unmistakable. That alone is a miracle. That alone is a testament to the clarity of human vision, once aided by a bit of glass and magnification. What you see through a telescope is pure, unfiltered, unedited. It is the real Saturn, just smaller. NASA shows you the fine print, the telescope shows you the signature, and then there is the emotional difference. In NASA, a photo is something you scroll past. A telescope view is something you never forget. In NASA, a photo is something you admire. A telescope view is something that changes you. When you see Saturn with your own eyes, your brain does something extraordinary. It shifts from imagination to confirmation. Saturn stops being an idea. It stops being an illustration. It becomes a place that exists. A place you are seeing with your own eyes. No digital screen in the world can compete with that. So when people ask whether Saturn really looks the way NASA shows it, the answer is simple. NASA shows you what Saturn looks like when you enhance the hidden. Your telescope shows you what Saturn looks like when you reveal the visible. Both are true, both are beautiful. Both complement each other, but the telescope view, the soft glowing golden sphere with a silvery ring, has something NASA cannot manufacture: authenticity. It is real, pure, untouched. It is the universe introducing itself not through equipment, not through spacecraft, but through your own vision. And that moment will stay with you forever. For thousands of years, Saturn stood in the night sky as a mystery that no human could truly interpret. It glowed softly among the stars, moving slowly across the heavens in a way that set it apart. but its true nature lay far beyond the grasp of ancient observers. To them, it was not a planet with rings or moons or swirling storms. It was simply a wandering star, one of the 5 bright lights that moved against the backdrop of the constellations. The ancients could track its path, they could see its steady, dignified yellow glow, they could chart its long 29-year journey around the sky. But they could not see the astonishing complexity that we now take for granted. Imagine being an astronomer thousands of years before telescopes existed. The night sky was your only library, and your eyes were your only instruments. You would stare upward and see Saturn drifting slowly through the heavens, but no matter how long you watched, you would never suspect that this distant point of light was surrounded by rings wider than the Earth itself. You wouldn't imagine that it had dozens of moons, or that it was a gas giant with storms roaring beneath its clouds. It simply appeared as a faint, steady dot, beautiful, yes, but bafflingly ordinary. The Babylonians were among the first to study Saturn with mathematical precision. They recorded its position night after night, year after year, noticing its slow backward motion against the stars. To them, this made Saturn a symbol of time, cycles, and discipline. They associated it with the god Ninurta, who represented order and boundaries. Yet, even with all their careful observations, not one Babylonian astronomer ever realized they were watching a world adorned with rings of ice and rock. The Greeks, who loved to turn celestial objects into stories, gave Saturn an identity rooted in mythology. They called it Kronos, the father of Zeus, the old god who ruled before the Olympians. Because Saturn moved so slowly, they imagined it as ancient, wise, and patient. Aristotle studied its motion. Ptolemy placed it in his geocentric model as the farthest and coldest of the planets. But even these great thinkers, who devoted their lives to understanding the cosmos, had no idea that Saturn in reality was a swirling, stormy sphere wrapped in shimmering rings that reflected sunlight like cosmic jewelry. For the ancient world, Saturn was simply a bright dot with symbolic meaning. It was not a physical place yet, it was an idea, and then everything changed in the early 17th century with the invention of the telescope. With this discovery, the universe transformed from myth into reality, from stories into science. And Saturn was one of the very first planets to reveal how dramatically different the universe truly was from what humans had imagined. When Galileo Galilei turned his telescope toward Saturn in 1610, he expected to see something similar to Jupiter, perhaps smaller, maybe with a few faint details. But what he saw stunned him. Saturn didn't look like a single sphere. It had what he described as ears. Strange bumps on either side of the planet that made it look distorted and unlike anything else in the sky. His telescope was too small and too blurry to show the rings clearly. Instead, he saw the planet flanked by 2 mysterious extensions, as though Saturn was stretching out arms or had 2 companions fused to its sides. Galileo had no idea what he was seeing. He sketched the shape again and again, but every time he looked, those odd appendages remained. They weren't separate moons, and they weren't illusions, but his telescope simply couldn't provide enough detail to reveal that the ears were actually rings. He wrote that Saturn is not a single star, but 3 together, because that was the only interpretation that made sense with the primitive optics he had. The most advanced scientific instrument of the time had just glimpsed the impossible, yet even Galileo misunderstood it. For the world's first telescope observer, Saturn became a puzzle piece with no matching pieces, a riddle staring back from the night sky. Years later, when Galileo looked again, he was even more confused. The strange ears had vanished. Saturn appeared perfectly round like any other planet. Galileo was baffled and even worried that his telescope had broken. But the truth was far more extraordinary. Saturn's rings had simply tilted edge-on to Earth, becoming so thin they were invisible through his small instrument. Galileo had stumbled upon one of the universe's most beautiful optical illusions without realizing it. It wasn't until 1655, 45 years after Galileo's first observation, that a Dutch astronomer named Christian Huygens finally solved the mystery. With a larger, clearer telescope, Huygens observed Saturn and realized that the strange shapes were not moons, arms, or optical distortions. They were a single, continuous ring encircling the planet. He wrote, "Saturn is surrounded by a thin, flat ring, nowhere touching, and inclined to the ecliptic." This was one of the greatest astronomical revelations of the 17th century. A world that had appeared simple for thousands of years was suddenly revealed as something majestic and alien. Imagine how revolutionary that must have been. Human beings, for the first time in history, realized that not everything in the universe followed familiar patterns. Saturn shattered the assumption that planets were simple spheres. Its rings suggested complexity, structure, beauty, and mystery on scales no human mind had previously conceived. For ancient astronomers, Saturn was a slow, moving light. For early scientists, it was a bizarre and confusing shape. For Huygens, it became the gateway to understanding just how strange and diverse the cosmos truly is. Even after Huygens proposed the ring structure, many astronomers doubted him. The idea seemed too radical. A ring floating around a planet, what force kept it there? Was it solid? Was it a single piece? Was it made of rock, ice, dust, or something else entirely? No one knew, and so, for decades, Saturn continued to be a source of debate and wonder. Each new telescope revealed a little more, but the full truth remained hidden until the 19th century, when James Clerk Maxwell, using nothing but mathematics, proved that the rings could not possibly be solid. A solid ring would break apart. Instead, the rings had to be made of countless tiny particles, each orbiting Saturn like a miniature moon. This was another discovery that felt impossible to the people of the time. The universe kept surprising them over and over again. But even with better telescopes and better theories, astronomers still struggled to interpret what they were seeing. Saturn's rings appeared differently depending on their angle, the quality of the telescope, and the clarity of Earth's atmosphere. Sometimes the rings looked wide and bright, sometimes they looked thin and faint, sometimes the Cassini division, the dark gap between the A and B rings, was visible, and sometimes it wasn't. The more scientists observed Saturn, the more variable and mysterious it appeared. It was a planet that refused to show itself all at once. The turning point came in the 20th century, when telescopes became large enough and precise enough to reveal Saturn's structure in stunning detail. No longer did astronomers need to guess. They could now see the shadow of the rings on the planet, the shadow of the planet on the rings, the banded atmosphere, and even the swirling storms. The once mysterious ears were now clearly wide rings made of billions of ice particles reflecting sunlight like cosmic mirrors. And then came spacecraft, the ultimate revolution. Pioneer 11, Voyager 1, Voyager 2, and eventually the Cassini spacecraft delivered images that no human eye could ever see from Earth. They revealed that Saturn wasn't simply beautiful, it was astonishing. The rings were made of intricate waves, spirals, divisions, and braids. The moons interacted with the rings in delicate gravitational dances. Storms raged at the poles. And the famous hexagon, a six-sided jet stream, spun endlessly on the North Pole like a giant cosmic puzzle. Looking back, it's incredible to realize how far humanity has come in understanding Saturn. For tens of thousands of years, ancient people saw nothing more than a point of light. For the first scientists with telescopes, Saturn was a confusing, blurry oddity. For early astronomers like Galileo, it was a source of frustration and misunderstanding. For Huygens, it was a revelation. For the scientists of today, it's a dynamic world filled with physics, chemistry, storms, moons, and mysteries. Saturn's journey from myth to science mirrors humanity's journey from wonder to understanding. It reminds us how limited our perspective can be when we rely only on what our eyes can see. From Earth, Saturn looks simple, but through greater tools, greater curiosity, and greater imagination, we uncover deeper layers of truth. Saturn teaches us that the universe is always more complex, more beautiful, and more surprising than we think. And perhaps the most profound part of this story is that the mystery is not over. Even today, with all our technology, Saturn continues to challenge our understanding. Its rings are disappearing over time, its storms behave in unpredictable cycles, its moons hold oceans and atmospheres. Every discovery raises new questions. Just as ancient astronomers gazed upward with wonder, we too look at Saturn and realize there is always more to learn. The mystery that baffled Galileo is still with us, just on a different level. This is what makes Saturn so captivating. Its appearance has evolved in our minds centuries before we ever physically reached it. It started as a light, became a puzzle, then a ringed world, then a masterpiece of celestial engineering. And now it stands as one of the most breathtaking and mysterious planets in the solar system, one that reminds humanity that knowledge is never complete and curiosity is never wasted. Saturn, from Earth, will always be a symbol of discovery. Modern telescopes have transformed Saturn from a distant curiosity into a world full of texture, motion, and phenomena so extraordinary that even the greatest astronomers of earlier centuries could not have imagined them. When you place your eye against the glass of a high-quality telescope, or look at the precise digital images produced by today's observatories, you are not merely observing a planet. You are witnessing a living system of gravitational balance, atmospheric activity, light, shadow, and geological forces interacting in real time across one of the most majestic landscapes in our solar system. To understand how transformative this is, imagine for a moment how Saturn appeared to people just a few generations ago, a blurred disk and a faint ring. Today, that view has evolved into something almost artistic in its detail. The most immediate feature that modern telescopes reveal is Saturn's rings not merely as a single structure, but as a complex system of multiple rings and divisions. With older telescopes, the rings looked like one continuous band, but with the resolution of modern optics, the rings break apart into the R ring, B ring, C ring, and the elusive ghost, like D ring. You see the Cassini division, a dark gap that slices the rings like a shadow, and beyond that, the Encke gap, a smaller separation caused by the gravitational influence of a tiny moon. These divisions appear razor sharp through a good telescope on a steady night, showing that Saturn's rings are not smooth surfaces but intricate structures sculpted by the gravitational pull of the planet and its moons. You can see where the rings brighten, where they thin out, where ice particles cluster, and where they scatter. The rings, once believed to be solid, now reveal themselves as billions of icy fragments, some the size of dust grains, others as large as entire mountains, reflecting sunlight in delicate, shimmering patterns. Yet the rings are only the beginning. Modern telescopes reveal the body of Saturn itself with surprising complexity. You see subtle bands stretched around the planet, similar to those on Jupiter but softer, more pastel, like in color. These bands are produced by atmospheric currents, storms, and chemical differences across Saturn's upper layers. In a high-quality telescope, you might catch hints of the planet's golden, creamy hues, shifting gently as sunlight plays across its cloud tops. Sometimes you see darker belts or brighter zones, revealing that Saturn, despite its peaceful appearance, is a world of powerful atmospheric dynamics. One of the most astonishing features visible through advanced telescopes is the shadow play between Saturn and its rings. Depending on the season, you might see the shadow of the rings cast across the planet's surface, a thin, dark line stretching across the sphere, slowly moving as Saturn orbits the Sun. Or you might see the planet its own shadow cast on the rings, forming a wedge of darkness that slices across the bright arcs like a cosmic sundial. These shadows reveal the three-dimensional geometry of the Saturnian system, reminding us that the planet and its rings exist together in a grand, dancing alignment of light. Modern telescopes also reveal subtle details about the tilt of Saturn's rings. As the planet moves along its 29.5-year orbit, the rings tilt toward Earth and then away, changing their appearance dramatically. When the rings are wide open, you see them as a luminous, expansive structure, glowing against the darkness of space. When they tilt nearly edge-on, the rings almost disappear, becoming nothing more than a thin, sharp line that slices across the planet's face. This phenomenon puzzled Galileo centuries ago, but today, telescopes allow us to watch the process unfold year after year with clarity and precision. It's like witnessing a celestial performance choreographed on a scale too vast for the human mind to fully comprehend. Another detail that modern telescopes reveal is the presence of Saturn's moons, small bright dots orbiting the planet. With a medium to large telescope, you can see Titan, the largest moon, glowing with a steady golden light. You can see Dione, Tethys, and Enceladus appearing like tiny pearls scattered around the planet. On a good night, you can even see these moons move slightly in just a few hours, giving you a sense of the dynamic nature of Saturn's system. Scientists and amateur astronomers alike track these moon positions, and modern telescopes allow for precise observation of their orbits. But perhaps the most dramatic discovery modern telescopes have enabled is the observation of Saturn's storms and atmospheric changes. Unlike Jupiter, whose storms are bold and obvious, Saturn's storms are subtle at first glance. Yet modern high-resolution imaging, particularly from Earth-based telescopes equipped with adaptive optics, reveals that Saturn experiences massive storms, some larger than Earth itself. Every 29 years or so, a great white spot appears near Saturn's equator, erupting like a bright scar across the planet's smooth face. These storms have been captured with increasing detail over the last few decades, revealing swirling patterns of clouds and waves that ripple through Saturn's atmosphere. In older telescopes, these storms were invisible, but now observers can watch them evolve, break apart, and dissipate over weeks and months. The hexagon, a six-sided jet stream at Saturn's North Pole, is another phenomenon once invisible to Earth-based observers, but now partially detectable through large modern telescopes. While spacecraft have given us the clearest views, powerful observatories on Earth have captured its faint outline, proving that Saturn's atmosphere contains structures unlike anything on Earth. The hexagon is not a static feature. It shifts, rotates, and breathes with the planet's internal dynamics. Being able to see even a faint trace of it from Earth is a testament to how far our observational technology has evolved. Modern telescopes don't just magnify, they filter, they're annealing, and read light. Through infrared observations, we see deeper into Saturn's atmosphere, revealing heat signatures, cloud depths, and even the movement of winds. Through ultraviolet observations, we see how sunlight interacts with the rings and atmospheric particles. Through spectroscopy, we identify the chemical composition of Saturn's clouds, rings, and moons. These tools allow astronomers to study Saturn not as a distant object, but as an active laboratory of physics and chemistry happening 4 billion kilometers away. Even amateur astronomers today, with consumer-level telescopes, can capture images of Saturn that rival the quality of professional observatories from the early 20th century. With the right equipment, you can photograph the Cassini division, visible moons, atmospheric bands, and even subtle color differences across the rings. Digital stacking, where images are layered to increase clarity, has democratized astronomy, allowing anyone with a passion for the cosmos to experience Saturn in unprecedented detail. What once required a massive observatory now can be done from a backyard with patience and skill. But the real magic comes from the fact that modern telescopes allow us to see Saturn not as a static object, but as a world in motion. You can watch the rings shift over the months. You can observe moons moving night by night. You can track storm activity, seasonal changes, and even minor fluctuations in brightness. Saturn becomes alive, a dynamic system constantly evolving under the forces of gravity, sunlight, and internal convection. This dynamic nature is further revealed through time-lapse observations. When modern telescopes repeatedly capture Saturn over long periods, we see patterns that ancient astronomers could not have imagined: spiral density waves in the rings caused by moon resonances, ring edges rippling like water due to gravitational interactions, and even faint structures known as spokes, dark features that appear temporarily in the rings, possibly caused by electromagnetic forces. These spokes move, shift, and vanish, revealing that Saturn's rings are not simply passive orbiting debris, but an active environment shaped by forces both visible and invisible. Modern telescopes have also allowed scientists to track Saturn's rotation more accurately. Saturn spins so rapidly that it bulges at the equator, creating an oblate shape. This was once only roughly observed, but contemporary imaging allows for precise measurements of its shape, tilt, and the alignment of its rings. Every observation adds a layer to our understanding, making Saturn one of the most studied celestial bodies in our solar system. Yet, for all the clarity modern telescopes provide, they also highlight how much we still don't fully understand. We see the rings, but their exact age remains debated. We see the storms, but their depths remain uncertain. We see moons interacting with the rings, but the long-term evolution of these systems remains a mystery. Every detail that modern optics reveals opens the door to deeper questions, questions that will inspire future missions and perhaps future generations of astronomers. The beauty of Saturn through modern telescopes lies not just in the details we can now see, but in the transformation of our relationship with the planet. Saturn feels closer, less like a distant light, more like a living world. It becomes a destination of thought and imagination, a place with weather, seasons, shadows, moons, and mysteries. A place where sunlight glints off icy particles, where gravitational rhythms create cosmic patterns, where storms wrap around the planet like bands of silk. Modern telescopes have taken what was once a soft glow in the night sky and revealed it as a masterpiece of celestial architecture. They have shown us the true scale and complexity of Saturn, its rings, its moons, its atmosphere, its storms, and its shifting seasons. They allow us to witness events happening a billion kilometers away, as if we were watching through a window into another world. And in doing so, they have deepened our appreciation for the planet, transforming it from a distant myth into a vivid reality, from an object of wonder into an object of study, and from a simple star-like point into one of the most breathtaking wonders of our cosmic neighborhood. Saturn's rings have always seemed eternal, so vast, so luminous, so iconic that it feels impossible to imagine the planet without them. For generations, these rings have represented the very symbol of cosmic beauty, a crown of ice and light orbiting one of the most majestic worlds in our solar system. But modern science has delivered a revelation that feels almost poetic in its tragedy. Saturn's rings are not permanent. They are slowly disappearing, and we live in the one cosmic moment out of billions of years when they are still here, visible, magnificent, and radiant. This realization changes the way we think about Saturn, about time, and even about our own fleeting place in the universe. To understand the weight of this discovery, Imagine looking at Saturn from Earth with a powerful telescope. You see a planet wrapped in shimmering rings that stretch over 280 kilometers from edge to edge. They look delicate, almost fragile, as though they couldn't possibly survive in the harsh vacuum of space. Yet they are also spectacularly bright, made mostly of ice that reflects sunlight with the brilliance of fresh snow. For thousands of years, humans believed that these rings were a permanent part of Saturn's identity. Ancient astronomers didn't know they existed, but when telescopes finally revealed them, scientists assumed they had always been there and would always remain. Today, we know that assumption was wrong. Saturn's rings are young, very young. In cosmic terms, they are practically newborn, possibly only 100 million years old, formed long after the age of the dinosaurs on Earth. And just as they had a beginning, they will also have an end. Slowly, particle by particle, the rings are being pulled into Saturn by gravity and electromagnetic forces, forming what scientists call ring rain. The ice and dust that make Saturn so beautiful are falling toward the planet, raining down along magnetic field lines and disappearing forever. This discovery does something profound. It transforms the rings from symbols of permanence into symbols of change. It reminds us that even the grandest structures in the universe are temporary. Nothing, not even a ring system larger than Earth's diameter, lasts forever. The speed of this disappearance is shocking. Every second, thousands of kilograms of ring material fall into Saturn's atmosphere. That may seem small compared to the ring's immense size, but over millions of years it adds up. Scientists estimate that Saturn's iconic ring system may vanish entirely in 100 million to 300 million years, a blink in the lifetime of a planet that is over 5 billion years old. If the solar system were a long movie, humans would be appearing in the final seconds of the final scene, looking up at Saturn at the exact moment when it still wears its glittering crown. This means something extraordinary. Human civilization exists at the perfect cosmic moment to witness Saturn at its most beautiful. If humanity had evolved earlier or later, Saturn would have looked completely different. 100 million years ago, its rings might have been even brighter, thicker, and more spectacular. 100 million years in the future, they may be barely visible, an echo of what they once were. And one day, they may vanish entirely, making Saturn appear more like Jupiter, a massive planet without a grand ring system. This rare timing makes Saturn's rings feel almost like a gift, something delicate and temporary that we get to witness during our brief stay in the universe. It also adds a sense of urgency and wonder to our telescopic observations. When we look at Saturn today, we are not just seeing what Saturn is. We are seeing what Saturn once was and what Saturn will no longer be. Every photo taken, every observation recorded, is capturing a moment that will not repeat. We are archivists of a cosmic masterpiece that is slowly fading. But the disappearance of the rings is not the only part of this story. Scientists are also trying to understand how the rings were formed in the first place. If they are temporary, what created them? The leading theory is that a moon, possibly an icy, medium-sized world, wandered too close to Saturn long ago. Gravity tore it apart, shredding it into a stream of ice and rock fragments that spread into orbit, forming the rings we see today. Another theory suggests that two large moons collided, scattering their remains into a thin disk that eventually settled into rings. Whatever their origin, the rings are the remnants of a violent cosmic event, born from destruction and sculpted by gravity into something breathtaking. This origin story makes the rings' eventual disappearance even more meaningful. They were created through an act of cosmic violence, refined over millions of years into a structure of sheer beauty, and now slowly dissolving into Saturn's atmosphere. They are a temporary monument to the forces that shape planets and moons. Their existence is a reminder that the universe is constantly in motion, creating, destroying, reshaping, and renewing. As the rings fade, the environment around Saturn will continue to evolve. The disappearance of the rings will change the amount of sunlight reflected toward Saturn's clouds, altering the planet's climate. It will affect the moons, whose orbits are influenced by the ring's mass. It may even reveal hidden phenomena, structures, or events currently masked by the brightness of the ring system. Future observers, millions of years from now, may not even realize Saturn ever had rings unless they find ancient records or detect faint remnants in orbit. When modern astronomers share this information, many people feel a sense of sadness. There is something melancholic about knowing that such beauty is temporary. But there is also another way to interpret it. The rings' impermanence makes them more precious, not less. It reminds us that beauty is often fleeting not only in astronomy, but in life. The most unforgettable things are rarely the things that last forever. They are the things that appear at the right moment, shine with all their brilliance, and then fade away, leaving memories and inspiration behind. In this sense, Saturn's rings mirror our own existence. Human lives are short compared to the lifetimes of stars and planets, yet they are filled with meaning. Saturn's rings, too, will fade, but in their short life they became one of the most iconic and spectacular features in the solar system. Their temporary nature does not diminish them, it elevates them. This brings us to the most powerful realization. Saturn is teaching us something about time. It teaches us that the universe is not static. It teaches us that even the most magnificent structures have life cycles. And it teaches us that being present, being alive right now, means witnessing a version of the cosmos that will never exist again. We often think of space as eternal, unchanging, frozen in time, but Saturn's disappearing rings prove that everything in the universe is evolving. Galaxies collide, stars ignite and die, moons break apart and form new worlds, even planets change their appearance over time. The Saturn we see today is not the Saturn of the past, nor will it be the Saturn of the future. We are living in a precious, transitional moment, one chapter in Saturn's long cosmic story. And because of this, every telescope that looks at Saturn, every spacecraft that photographs it, every scientist or enthusiast who studies it is doing more than just observing a planet. They are preserving a moment in the universe's history that will one day be gone. Future species, future civilizations, if they exist, may never get to see Saturn as we see it. What we witness today may become a legend to them, a story passed down like an ancient myth, a planet that once had rings, a beauty that once existed. Knowing this transforms the way we look at Saturn. It changes the way we value what we see. It makes each observation feel like an act of appreciation, a celebration of cosmic beauty, a reminder that time flows everywhere, in our lives, in our solar system, and across the entire universe. And perhaps the most profound part of this story is that we, as human beings, are the first species in the history of the planet Earth to know this. The rings have been there for millions of years. Countless generations of humans lived under the same sky, completely unaware that the rings existed at all. Then telescopes revealed them, then spacecraft captured them, and only in recent decades did we discover that they are temporary. This knowledge is a privilege, a cosmic responsibility, an invitation to observe, to wonder, to learn. Saturn's disappearing rings remind us that beauty is not defined by permanence, it is defined by presence. The rings are here now, in our time, in our age of science, in our generation's window onto the cosmos. They are bright enough to be seen in backyard telescopes, majestic enough to inspire art, poetry, photography, and countless dreams. real enough to trigger missions like Voyager and Cassini, and temporary enough to make every observation feel like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As we look at Saturn from Earth, we are not just seeing what it is, we are seeing a moment of cosmic grace, a fleeting masterpiece suspended in the vast canvas of the universe. The rings may fade someday, but the awe they inspire, the knowledge they give, and the sense of connection they spark will last far longer. And that is what makes Saturn more than a planet. It makes it a story written in ice and time, in light and shadow, in creation and disappearance. A story that we are fortunate enough to witness before the final chapters unfold.